the water's fine, homie, jump into the deep end. Sow it, you will reap it. We're talking how to start it, how to grow it, how to keep it. Take a deep breath. You are now rocking with Founder Secrets.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Founder Secrets. Today, we just got Taylor and myself, Flaviu, here. We had a little break, a little hiatus, a lot of stuff happening in our lives, and wanted to have this pod to be a more nice little bookend to the first. How many episodes have we done?
Over 120.
That's amazing. That's I remember I tried to do a podcast 10 years ago and I only got 3 episodes in, and I was like, this is too much.
You were early.
And so we thought we'd take, hey, let's share the learnings we've had in these 120 plus episodes, share with the world, and have like a little nice goodbye for now. Who knows when we might be back if the people demand it. And we interview we meet some more interesting people, which I think has been kind of the initial start of all this. Although our first episode was like the news, that was so bad.
It was at EO House, wasn't it? It was at EO House.
Yeah, it was like really loud. So,
but it was good.
I'll let you go first because I think you've peaked currently at the best podcast setup. I mean, your podcast setup for this last episode is the best I've ever seen in somebody's home. So that's incredible. You're like Joe Rogan over there.
Yeah. So, a lot of change in, I think, both of our lives, but it sold newsletter, been working for the acquirer, SimilarWeb, and kind of transitioning all of our clients over and all the tech and all that good stuff, kind of winding that down right now. And then my wife is pregnant. And so we have a baby boy coming in a few weeks, which hasn't been announced anywhere on social media. This is just on the pod.
You want to announce the name on the pod?
No. That would be bad for my marriage, but name will be secret until the baby comes. But baby boy coming. We bought a house and moved to Dana Point in like South Orange County, Southern California. It's beautiful, but one of the things that wanted in a home was to be able to make a real studio. So went all out, like just in time to no longer be doing sales calls at work and no longer be doing a podcast. So really
who knows? Maybe we'll start a podcast business next.
That's true. All day, just shooting pods. But yeah, so I do think it's a little helpful to talk because the podcast initially was your idea, Flaviu, and so we started it 3.5 years ago. We were at different stages of our lives. We both lived in New York then. What was the original idea behind the pod, and do you think we've done it?
Yeah, I remember we were in this bar, meatpacking, and I think we both had listened to the My First Million podcast that talked about how it's nice to share with the world the conversation or learning through podcast form. And we were meeting so many interesting people, having these great conversations, or people wanted to have lunch or coffee, and thought, hey, wouldn't it be awesome if we did those conversations, but also recorded them and then published them and let them live on to perpetuity. And so I think we did exactly that. We got to meet so many people, and I think we don't even know the impact that's had. I still get people telling me like, oh, hey, I learned about this person on the pod, or I got connected with Maya from Alia Health, the recent episode we did on olive oil, and my friend told me that he's been drinking the olive oil every day, and he attributes his recent healthiness to us. This olive oil. Yeah, well, sort of indirectly to us, but yeah.
That I love it. All right, so we put together like 5 or 6 kind of learnings. So let's start with this because I think we have a little bit of disagreement on this one. I was kind of thinking, so at the beginning, when we first did the pod, we were recording in a studio on the west side of Manhattan. It was on like 31st and 6th or something.
Mm-hmm.
and and so we'd go in person. Almost all of them were in person then, and it's I on reflecting on this, I think doing them in person is best for a few reasons. One, when it's virtual, right now we use Riverside. When it's virtual, it just shows up on your calendar as just another Zoom, basically the equivalent of a Zoom meeting. And so you're hopping from one to another. Whereas when you have to go into a studio, it's a big deal, right? You got to get dressed up. You gotta get in the car or walk or bike or however it is you're going to get there. Um, and it really felt like an event. It felt like something you'd kind of base your day around, not just for us, but for the guests. And it was a big deal. It also, I think, enabled us to make a connection with the person more quickly as soon as they come in, you greet them when they come off there and they're like, wow. And it just really set the tone. Now there was a downside to it, and that some people, they really shriveled up under the lights, and they really didn't share a lot. They felt really under the lights. But I think that for everyone else, you came up an elevator, it felt like something special, and you're in the middle of Manhattan. And when we went to virtual, mostly because I moved to California, it's all my fault. Uh, uh, it felt more like a chore, or like another meeting. And some people would show up late, or they didn't take it as seriously. Whereas when we did it in person, dude, they would show up early. They were all pumped. They were always excited. The counter to this, I think, is My First Million, as you pointed out. Theirs is virtual. 95% of their episodes are virtual, and they somehow have made it work. So obviously, this works for a lot of pods, but that's kind of my thought. What do you think about like the in person, virtual, and all that?
It was great. We had our logo on the screen right when we
Yeah,
came out of the
yeah.
elevator, and it's very official. Felt really nice. And you're right. Some of the people, they were really, really great in person. Really made it amazing. And we also did those shorts back then with having different camera angles. So it's just a overall more professional experience. But you're right. On the other hand, some people just didn't do so well in person, or I mean, we had a person like forget to show up, so then we're like at the studio, and they're like, okay, now we're just gonna do the podcast without them. So it was definitely like higher stakes, higher cost, higher, more time consuming, and occasionally like a real dud, because you're right. Some people just were like, whoa, there's like a lot of cameras here, like this is unusual. I mean, we interviewed Lady Gaga's dad and got parenting advice from him. And I think like asking that about Lady Gaga, almost like, you could see a tear in his eye. You couldn't do that over Zoom. That can only happen in person. And so, and I think, hey, who knows? I'll bring it back when we're both in person in a place. Maybe we'll do some of that. But I think we we through Zoom we still were able to do these connections with people. Probably a little too long. I think in the future might do like a little more succinct, more bite size if they're gonna be Zoom, like no more than 20 minutes. So it keeps it very, very sharp for everybody. Yeah. So I think.
Um, let's talk. Well, we'll talk about that in number 4. So the most. Okay, so I was looking at all of our guests, and the highest performing episodes, most of them were the early episodes. They were in person. They were kind of early episodes. And what I noticed, I think, is that the most successful guests, successful in that they were interesting to talk to, they were successful in business, successful in life. Um, they were quite intense people. That was one of my big takeaways. Our most watched episode was with Jeremy. He was a private equity healthcare guy, sold his business. Dude, he came with his suitcase. Remember, he came to the studio directly from LaGuardia. He had landed like an hour ago, got in the car, drove straight to the studio. He had a full day of meetings. We were his first. It felt like we were like a television production, because he's like going to us, then he's going to Bloomberg, and that was like, dude, this is awesome. Like, and he brought so much energy, if you remember.
Yeah.
And he was like fast talking, brought a lot of learnings. He was in town from Miami, but he was an intense person, right? Like in a good way. He was smart and direct and full of energy. You just like wanted to be around him. I didn't know him. You knew him through IPO. But like 5 minutes after being with this guy, you're like, can we go to lunch? Like, it was just, he had something about him that was really contagious. And then our second most streamed episode was with Nadav, who I think that one actually was virtual. That one was virtual.
Yeah.
The founder of Open Web. And so after so many episodes, it kind of wasn't surprising, because people ask, is there anything surprising about it? And there were surprising things, which we'll get to, about the pod. But this part wasn't as surprising. Like, to me, the people that were intense and really smart were quite successful. And the people that weren't, it wasn't that they wouldn't be successful, but you have a lower percentage chance. I don't know. What do you think?
You're right. They definitely had a high level of intensity. I don't know sometimes whether you have to have that to be extraordinarily successful in business, or you're successful despite that intensity and you surround yourself with people to balance you out. But yeah, I think you're right.
Intense. So this next one I think is going to be near and dear to your heart. I think that mentors and mentorship mean a lot to people. This was something that I've changed my mind on. I'm the kind of person that if I'm listening to an interview, if I'm listening to a podcast interview with somebody, I don't care about your childhood. I don't care about your family history. I don't care about like the early days. I just traditionally have skipped right towards the middle. Like, just give me the good stuff. And same way if I'm like reading a biography, I don't care about what you did when you were 6 years old. And so I'd skip.
Wait, so you start biographies in the middle?
In the middle, just flip open to like page 220 and start reading. Or if I'm listening to the Founders podcast, right? He does a good job of it. But yeah, I've thought, like, oh, just give me the good stuff. I don't care about those early age. And as I've gotten older, and we've done over 200 or over 120 episodes here, I now see the opposite. I think, as I'm having a child soon, I think that the early days are important. And I think something that is interesting is, on this podcast, we have had many people come on that one random comment by a boss, 20 years ago, not only do they still remember, but it still drives them in a negative or a positive way sometimes. It could have been a really, really nice comment about something that happened. Oftentimes it was kind of a negative comment, and that's driven them for many years. But that,
100%.
right? Like that
My
really
co-founder in
continues.
Aventi, by the way, the reason he started a business is because his boss that this company worked at had a policy against beards. Like, you couldn't he wanted to grow a beard, and the boss is like, no, you got to shave here. If you want to work here, you got to shave. And he's like, what? No, I'm out. I'm going to start my own business. I want to have the freedom to grow facial hair.
Love it.
Simple as that.
And yes. And there's so many stories like that. And it still drives these people today. And those early mentors too, right? Like the positive words, the mentors in the early ages, in the early days, I think really do pay off. And I know you've been investing a lot into being a mentor, and I think mentors meant a lot to you when you were younger, and I think still do. Um, uh, but I mean, what do you think of that? The power of mentorship.
Oh, that was great. That was always the best. I think we did a great job introducing these icebreakers, and the one around mentorship, I think, were some of the best icebreakers we've had, because people would share, yeah, like you said, these moments when somebody said something that completely changed their trajectory. And it's hard to create those moments. I think they just happen, as much as you might want to try as a parent or a mentor to be like, hey, this is the moment. Here's the lesson. Learn it. It's not usually those moments that people remember. It's something completely unexpected and engineered.
So what do you think, like, when we think about what worked well and maybe things that improved? I really liked our the icebreakers and kind of the structure. What do you think worked
Yeah, I love
well
when
about that?
we shared. Yeah, I love when we asked a question, but then like we were the ones that also shared and weighed in on it. because some of the stuff we had experience or stories on. And I think when we shared those stories, it was really powerful. Then the guests that were best were the ones that didn't just say stuff kind of monotonously or logically or here's what happened. It's more told as a really fun story, right? And and I think it was nice when we threaded those stories in to the pod from our own lives and experiences. I think that made it fun for us, and I think fun for other people too.
And I think one piece of feedback that I've received from uh, our many dozens of listeners is that that they wanted to hear more from you and I. And I think that this was a mistake that we made, maybe, or if we were to do it all again, I think I would, like to your point, find more ways of incorporating you and
Yeah.
I into, like, we did this with the icebreakers and things, but I think even more like finding even more ways of putting you and I out there. Also because every week or every other week when we have guests on, we didn't have the same guests. So every time you and I obviously know each other well, but every time we're kind of like starting from zero again with the other guest, and it made it hard. Like it would take longer to warm up, and sometimes they would laugh at our jokes, sometimes they would play along, sometimes they wouldn't. You don't want to make it awkward. So, I mean, what do you think about that? About how we share versus how much of it was kind of interviewing or pulling things out of people?
Yeah, that's right. Some people just like were really hard to pull things out. One named the person that came right as they woke up, like from a nap, and it was like the hardest interview to do.
I don't even think we released that one. Yeah.
So I think you're right. It's so much of it is energy and how you jive with the person. And I think if they were in our industry, like when I brought healthcare people, it made it a lot, at least more fun for me. I don't know about the audience, that I could ask very specific healthcare questions from my experience. So yeah, I think us being more of a part of it, we'll do it in the future. When this thing comes back, that'll be definitely the way to do it. Plus, we just got better at interviewing in general. I think we first were very nervous and we sounded kind of awkward. Not that we're that much better, but I feel more comfortable interviewing people now. So I think, part of the reason we started this, I remember we would meet a new person, like at BetaWorks, our co-working space, and then the two of us would just start like peppering them with questions. Like, so like this person would be like, oh, hey, I do this. And then we got, okay, so when you start, okay, like, okay, how much, revenue you're making? Like, wait, what's your, like, like, do you like start peppering with questions? And I think somebody was watching this being like, whoa, you guys really like ask very, um, I don't know, insightful, like, because we have this experience and we know, like, somebody says they're doing a business, we know exactly like questions to ask to uncover: is this real? How real? What's the potential here? What's the growth? I think from a curiosity and just we're just excited to meet another person doing a business, so we kind of zone into these peppering with questions. And somebody who's outside of that, I think, uh this kind of experiencing something new for the first time that I think we brought to the podcast, which is cool.
I'm with you. I think a challenge is that when we would have those kind of conversations at BetaWorks or Soho Works or any of these kind of places, people would give honest answers, right? They would say, "Oh yeah, here's," but then
Right,
you put a camera in front of them or they record,
right,
and sometimes they would, and it's not that people were dishonest, but they really wouldn't
right.
share as much. Um, and I think that's, or I don't know how you get people to share more. Um, but yeah,
That's a good point. Yeah, you're right. We called it founder secrets because we would uncover, yeah,
right.
like these secrets from folks. I think in a regular conversation, much harder to do on the pod. People are sensitive to sharing that when they think the whole world might be listening at some point. Even though this is a public conversation, right? We're having a co-working space. I guess a journalist or someone could overhear it, so it could be technically the same, just as public. For some reason, the podcast, you're right. People would not share numbers like how much did you sell for? What's the multiple of that? I think that was a big thing. A lot of people think when somebody sells, it's for a much higher number than it is. And we always try to uncover the number to share with the people because I think, you see a $5 million business, they think, you sold for 50 million because you see people get 10 times revenue on the internet all the time. And then you're surprised to find out it was 10 or 15. and there's nuances to valuations that people just don't talk about.
Liquidation
on that.
preferences, or how they
Right.
actually, maybe the number was 50, but they didn't actually get 50 because a bunch of it was
Right.
an earnout, and the investors took, 80% of it. And I will give a
Right.
shout out. So Jen, who came on, she was probably episode like around 80 or 90 with Cuddle Clones, was actually quite honest about how
That was great.
and that episode was great because she was quite honest with what didn't go so well in her acquisition and what she'd do differently. Because you're right, like so you and I would know these people, some of them,
Right.
and then we'd talk off the pod. They would tell you everything you're just saying, or it's like, well, here's what the public number looks like, but here's what actually
Right.
happened, and we're like, great. And you get them on the pod, and they don't share any of that. And I understand why. It's recorded. I mean, people were worried about like government agencies, being, hey, if anybody ever listened to this from whomever, because of immigration or because,
Right.
right? Like my immigration status, I don't ever want it to be called into question because I did this specific thing. And it's things that I never would have thought of. Yeah, it became harder to get things out of people. I think it always was hard to get things out of people. But we did get better at it, I think, because we shared more, we did more.
Yeah, I think we got way, way better. And you could tell people who had experience doing pods versus people who didn't, for sure.
You really could. You really could.
Um,
Okay, let's
get to the one that's like, podcast definitely a job. I think that I resonate with this. This is definitely probably the main reason we're ending it. It's just, it's work and we're not getting paid.
right.
Are you getting paid?
We pay money
Like
for
secret
this.
sponsorship.
Like we pay money, like, especially we had the studio. We were paying all of this money. Like go on. So running a podcast is a job. Like what does that mean to you?
Yeah, well, initially I got excited about learning how to do the video editing and using AI, and that was fun for a while. But I think 120 episodes, a lot of episodes to edit. So I think after you do like 10 or 20 of them, you're like, okay, like this is good. I don't need to be doing this, 2 hours, 3 hours a week, every week. It adds up, and it's not as much fun. And honestly, the less work you put into it, then it just doesn't seem, it's not as professional. So then if it's not, it's like it's a negative loop, because then if the podcast doesn't look as professional, it's not on social media as nice, then you're like, I'm not as proud of it, so then I won't push it or post it, so that I'm not as excited for it, which then means I'll spend even less time on the editing. And so it's just like this negative loop that leads to, well, eventually we hired a producer to do it, but they were okay. I think there is a certain insight to what makes a good little insight from the podcast, that it takes a skill to get out, and it takes kind of a higher level skill than just plain old editing. And some of these producers just made a lot of mistakes. So then it was managing this person, which is not what we want to be doing either. I think it was, even in the age of AI, it felt like more work than I expected.
So much work, and there's work in, like to your point, the production, but there's like actually producing it, coming up with the reels, all of this. And there are AI tools that do this stuff, but it's really not as good as they think. But you ain't got to post it like on all these things. There's a lot of places to post these things, and you got to figure out like what to put, right? Like you got to write the
Right.
captions. Like it's a lot to do these things, especially if you're not being paid for it. And then you got to promote it. So then it's okay, let's put it on our social media or what have you. We had a number of producers, if you remember. We probably had 4 or 5 total, I would
Yeah.
guess. They were all like varying degrees of okay, I would say. Right?
Yeah.
Like just the way it
Yeah.
was. And so then but that's only one part of it, because remember we had to get guests. Like we were I mean, it was a
Yeah.
ton of work
And
to
somebody's
get
got to
guests
email
on
the
here.
guest. Honestly, I do think in 6 months, maybe a year, AI will get to a point where it can actually be more of a full service, editing, producing, posting, and emailing the guests. I think we'll get there eventually. We're not there today, but maybe that's the time where we come back, is when that's more of a nice experience.
Like this does seem doable. This actually, I think, would be a good business to start is kind of like a podcast in a box. Like if it was using Claude or something, and I mean, you're right, because we now know kind of the nuance of these things. It might be fun business. If anybody wants to start it, reach out to Flaviu and I. We'll help you. As an example of how bad AI is, right? We all talk about how amazing it is. Riverside, which is what we use, they have an AI producer, and we used it on a recent episode, and it was me and Laurel, and it decided on its own to cut out my audio at the 17-minute mark and stop. So after 17 minutes of that episode, you only hear her, and it's like, why did AI do this?
It just decided it didn't add any value.
Yeah, just muted me, and for the rest of the episode, you can't hear me. And it's still like that today because it's so much work and so annoying to like replace it. And so like your point, Flavie, I mean, we used to have a sponsor. We had a sponsor that paid for our producer for a while, Dash VA. I wonder if they're still around.
Yeah.
He was a friend of the pod, and that that was useful and helpful. But yeah,
By the way, that VA business, I use another VA that was on the pod, Sagan, and they're great. And I've already hired 2 or 3 people using this VA in Argentina. She's like amazing. The founder calls me up or sends me an email like, hey, let's do this AI thing. I thought it was a webinar. So I just happened to join thinking I'll just like listen into some AI webinar, but it's actually him and it's a one-on-one call. And he's like, okay, so like it seems like it's a sales call. It's like, so what are your challenges? Like, I'm like, whoa, wait a second. Like, I'm already a customer. Like, I already paid you money. I use the service. Like, I don't need to be sold on this. Right? Like, I'm using it for VAs. It's fine. And he's like, well, we are changing our business. Well, what do you mean? And he says, we're going from hiring all these, people all over the world as virtual employees or actual employees to people to agents. So now your credits are gonna switch to like being, you can buy agents. So like, I need to know your challenges over the business, and then we'll build you an agent that takes the credit, and that's gonna be that instead of the human. I was like, whoa, like,
wait, they're literally replacing humans with agents.
They're literally changing the humans who I was like looking forward to hire to agents. And I don't know that I fully buy it, but that's literally what they're doing in their business right now. So that's why we were having a sales call. I gave them some problems we had. I think they're building an agent for us, but I haven't heard back. So I think maybe it's a little early, but it's crazy to think that the businesses are actually, they're completely not hiring these people in the other countries. Seems like we're in healthcare coming the last ones that I'm still hiring humans, and I feel bad about it because it seems like everybody I'm like, I need a job and I found a great human and they do it and I hired them. And it seems like that's not at all what the future holds.
Maybe, or maybe, maybe you're right. Yeah. So I guess that's another thing that we noticed through this pod. We've been doing it almost 4 years, and there's like boom and bust cycles, right? Like on here, we kind of saw that, to your point, like there was the rise, dude, all of our friends in New York were launching VA businesses. Like
our first episode was out like Sam Bankman-Fried, and like everybody was in crypto.
That's right.
Launching a coin. Remember that whole world?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And all those same people are now in AI. Like it's like there's this wave of people and investors that we know, and they're just chasing. I think this is a good actually takeaway for starting a business, because I do think a lot of people start a business because they see a trend, right? They see like AI. I remember when I first started my business, the trend was in kind of Instagram, photo editing. That world was really hot. There were a million apps for doing stuff with your photos. And lo and behold, only like 1 or 2 survived from that era. But there were a lot of people I knew that were doing similar type things because that was the trend. And so I think that's a really bad reason to start a business. The chances that you're the Instagram of the era or the OpenAI of the era, right? Or the Coinbase of the era. Like there will be successful companies on this trend, but by the time you and I hear about it, honestly, even though we're like more on the cutting edge, we're still 6 months behind the like OpenAI was founded like Elon Musk, and it's like there's no way I would have been at that point in time launching that particular business. So all the people that come after, I think, have a zero chance of succeeding, basically. And instead, I guess my theory for a better is to not completely dismiss the trend, but to take something that's trend, like an AI, crypto, whatever, photos, and I think of a Venn diagram, and you merge it with a field that's completely like unsexy, has nothing to do with technology, something completely uncorrelated, right? Like construction or healthcare or just something completely analog that has no overlap with AI in Silicon Valley at all. And if you just overlap those a little bit, I think that's a much better template for doing a business. And hey, it's worked for me. I wasn't even in healthcare. Again, I think I was more chasing the trends until I luckily found my co-founder who was on the other side, and I think helped me understand this. But I still see it today. People, like, I have a friend right now who just pivoted to financing GPUs. I was like, dude, that's what Casper's doing. Like, or not Casper, what's that? Albert's. That's what Albert's doing. So like, if nobody's immune for this, you would think it's a basic idea what I just said, but obviously a public company just did this. Like, some of the smartest, richer people continue to fall for this trap.
With you. And it works for a certain percentage of people. Like it's almost like a dopamine high, I think, to try to do it. Uh, I agree that there are ways of chasing these trends. And obviously, look, you and I aren't telling anybody what to do. But it is funny to like see these trends over and over and see the same thing play out, just with different, crypto is certainly one. But there have been a bunch of these. Like right now it's AI, Web3, which was like slightly different than like crypto. I'm with you. Like some guys that I met in New York, they follow every trend. And by the way, they rebrand all their social media for everyone. There's a guy, I know I won't name him. We were friendly in New York. He moved out to Connecticut, but he was like really into. He followed every trend, and then he became a real estate agent. So then he was like real estate, and because he was more of a creator, he started creating these really intense videos about real estate. I don't know if he actually made any money as a realtor. So then he started becoming a coach to realtors. So then he like went into this whole coaching thing, and I'm like, wait, but you weren't a successful realtor. That's why he became a coach. And so I recently saw him on some feed somewhere. I disabled pretty much all social media on my phone, but I saw him somewhere that he's now a coach to AI companies for Alex Hormozi. It's like he works for Hormozi now.
No way.
Yeah, he works for acquisition.com. God bless him. I hope it works out. But I've seen so many iterations of this. And then there's part of this too, where there's an element of like reinvention that can happen, right? Like I've had so many business ideas. Dude, you've had so many business ideas. I guess what's different is that you and I don't share them publicly until they are something, right? Like putting something out there and then it doesn't work. I'm almost in awe of somebody who could put something out there, it doesn't work, and then they just like take it all down and like rebrand and try something else. And then you're like, oh, that didn't work either. Let me take it all down. Let me scrub all my social media of all that stuff. I'm almost in awe of people who could do it.
Totally.
Because that's not us. I don't think that's you or I.
Really tough till the next point around fundraising, because I think what ends up pushing these people most is they see investors invest, and investors fall for these trends. So then they're investing in the trends. So then the entrepreneurs that want to raise money are like, gosh, I can't do Web3 anymore. I got to do an AI startup now because that's where the investors are looking. So I think it pushes people to make those decisions. And I think the investors that do it also aren't really successful investors, because by the time, if you're a Sequoia, you're investing in AI, but you're investing in the category leader of that AI space, right? If you're investing in the 10th AI model company, then, the VC model is about a winner take all or take most market. And so the 10th guy is not going to have enough capital to be able to compete with the top three. And so it becomes eventually an acquisition play at best. So I do think this all gets hyped up through fundraising. And hey, no, I don't think investors mean to. They, on the other hand, have the same challenge with their investors, right? Being like, hey, why are you investing in, uh, trucks and tires when we're in AI?
Good business.
They get they get pressured to. You're right. The people who do like the some of the people I know in the neighborhood who work in private equity in groups, infrastructure, very boring businesses, and it's
They own
a
the
small
nicest apartments.
percent. Exactly. The smallest, they own us, they take a tiny percent of a very big number that the government of Sweden, invests in. And so it's it's they might have an AI allocation that they'll throw to somebody over in Silicon Valley, but most of the money is not in that in that game. Most of the money is in like the very boring like businesses game.
Dude, and I think that in the circles that you and I, especially in New York, ran around in, it was like people would brag about how much money they raised. And in other industries, there's not bragging around those things, but in other industries, you'd be proud of how much profit you generated, right? Like it's so skewed, and I think that it's to this point around fundraising can be quite dangerous. Raising money, look, both you and I both have done it. Raising money can be useful, but it's not the end, right? Like it's really just the beginning. If you raise money, now you're beholden to all these investors. And by the way, when you go to sell the business, those investors take a cut, and depending on how the deals are structured, they might take a lot more than you think they did, especially if it's not this runaway success. Maybe it was a good business, but not the runaway success you hoped. Whereas, most of the economy doesn't work like that. Like the vast majority of businesses don't have investors. Like they're just their business, like you make signs or you design websites or you're an AI consultant, which by the way, like the trend around AI, like you can make a lot of money in AI, not by being a frontier model or any of these things, but just go be a consultant to medium-sized businesses in, power generation companies. And you're the best person at that. Go speak at their conferences, and
Right.
you charge them $100,000 a year for how to integrate AI into their business. Like there are certainly ways to make money, and you don't need any investors for that. Yeah, like that. There definitely are ways to make money in those kinds of spaces.
Why don't you share kind of your takeaway, your last takeaway, and then I want to share an app idea I've been working on.
Okay,
And then we'll cut
so
it.
I was we were asking questions about from AI. What are some questions that it had for us? And AI came up with this question I thought was good. What is one lesson that applies beyond startups to marriage, friendship, money, health, or life that we learned through this podcast? And my answer to that, based on all these episodes, is how you do anything is how you do everything. So to make something successful, whether it's a marriage, a friendship, a business partnership, anything, it takes intense and consistent effort. You have to do it when you don't want to, when you're tired, when you think it's not worth it, when someone may have wronged you, which happens more often than we may think, or anything else. So you give 100% effort or 0% effort, which is part of the reason that we're kind of ending this pod, right? Is let's shut this down and do it in a nice and graceful way. But I think it applies to so much, and that lesson has come through from the people that we've interviewed on here. At least I've heard it. Just put 100% effort into whatever it is that you want to focus on, and then just remove the other things that you're not as interested in putting the effort into. Don't do them. It's not like do them 30%. It's just remove them. Cut those things. What do you think?
I agree. And let me show you what I'm going to put 100%
Let's see it.
into.
Flaviu's next chapter.
There we go. Why, do you see this?
Now I see it.
All right. I got the domain openthanks.com. So
Did you buy it?
yeah,
Yes.
I bought it.
Yeah.
It wasn't that expensive. Not a lot of people betting for it, but somebody owned it, and I think it was $500. So I got OpenThanks.com, and it's a place where you can only spread positive thank yous. So you can't post any negative, and it's a way of people to publicly give thanks. So you say, hey, thank you for this, thank you for that, to your friend, to your third grade teacher, and then it shows up publicly on your profile. If I put like, let's see, if I put like my profile, you can see my profile. There you go, and you can see like, hey, who thanked me and who have I thanked. You can post like, you know, pictures and videos, and that's really it. It's a very simple concept, but it didn't exist anywhere, and I thought it should exist. Now the challenge is getting people to actually use it. So I'm trying different techniques to get people like
What are you trying?
weekly appreciation. So you'll get an email Friday with who you appreciate, who you thank for this week. Because this is the kind of thing I don't want people using every day, nonstop scrolling. It's more of a once a week kind of thing, more like LinkedIn. Also, I just I coded up a system where you can just reply to the email. So instead of having to log in and post it, if you just reply to the email, it's like, oh, I just want to thank Taylor. Here's his email. Here's his message. It'll post it automatically for you without having to log in. Next, I'm going to add texting to be able to do it via text. So I'm just trying different things. It's obviously really hard to grow this marketplace kind of social media type of thing, but I am very pumped. I love it. It's gives like a lot of positivity, and it's and I do see a potential. It's really hard to grow, but once you do grow it, so say you have like millions and millions of people using it, I see like a million ways to monetize it too. So I think it can be an actual business. Like businesses would want to do this internally to like, or you might want to thank a business, or you might want to thank, you know, a nonprofit and give money through the platform too. So I think it's got a lot of areas you could grow into if people use it, but that's the biggest challenge right now.
How are you
What do
building
you
it?
think?
In Claude or something else?
I'm using Vercel V0. Do you know Vercel?
I haven't used it, but it's kind of like
It's
it's like a
yeah, it's
lovable
a
Replit
little
kind of thing, right?
bit yeah, it's a little slightly better than Lovable with some of the back end things, but it's very similar. Like for example, it's able to do the LinkedIn authentication, which Lovable just shrugged, couldn't figure it out. Also, you can choose your models. Vercel, you can use the Claude kind of best model, and it just comes up with slightly better answers than, like, I think Replit is the worst.
I agree.
Lovable's next, and
Yeah.
then Vercel's a little bit better because, and what I mean by the worst is just a lot of times they'll be like, "Oh yeah, I know what you mean. Here's the result," and then they're like, "Hey, this doesn't work." Like, "Oh yeah, you're right. It's because this API key is missing. Thanks for, you know, like, oh no, it should work." And then I tell you like, "No, it still doesn't work." "Oh yeah, well thanks for telling me. It's because we didn't add this piece of code." Like, bro, why can't you just fucking check this? Sorry.
Or I'll be like, hey, that math doesn't make sense. Like it's like, oh, it's because I didn't write the formula. I just put in placeholder numbers. And you're like, okay, well, that's not what I told you to do.
Yeah, exactly. Vercel, and I think it's because it's using the top Claude model and it does use up a lot of credits, does do a little more of that. You can ask it to do a little more testing. So that's why it's a little better.
He's looking for a co-founder for OpenThanks.com. So if you're ready, it's reach out to Flaviu. I do want to end with one final thing, which is that it's really to give and this actually ended up coinciding well with your idea, but to give thanks to you. This was your idea. This podcast has been a blast. I would encourage anyone listening to this to do something like this, you know, with a friend, you know, anyone that you want to stay in contact with. Because as you know, I moved across the country. You and I hung out 4 times a week, like at times in our lives. I saw you a lot. I was very worried that moving, I would lose connection with you and others in New York. And this podcast has been a great way of keeping, not just in touch with you, but it gives like something fun to talk about and comment on and do together. Which was when we first started the pod at that bar, to your point at the beginning of this episode. That was the idea. Like the idea was like, number one is to do something fun. And when people would ask me or you, hey, how many views are you getting? Or how many listens? And we didn't care. I looked at the numbers before this episode for the first time in a year, 2 years. And it's because the goal all along was for it to be fun for you and I, which it has been, and it's been it's been a lot of fun to do with you. So thank you for pushing for this up front. 120 plus episodes in, it's been a really good time.
Oh, thank you, brother. Thanks, my friend. It was always fun doing it with you. And who knows when we'll be back?
We'll be back.
Never know.
That's right. AI secrets.
See you later. Bye.
We're out.
Thank you for rocking with the homies. Taylor, Trusty, and Flaviu. Seize the day, own it. Until next time, hold it down, hold it down. Hey.